serve as a reminder to be vigilant.
Thank you. How are you?
Hey, Frank, good. How are you?
It's good to see you.
Good seeing
Good
you
to see
too.
you. Now I made the connection. Reactions, observations, thoughts, questions?
I think like when he's talking about his family and raising his kids, I think everybody in this room has done that. It just made me think, you know, how you explain things to your kids. Of course, I think we're all role models and we're good role models based on what we do for a living. But the one thing that I've told my boys since they were very little, and I haven't really changed, and I should, I haven't really changed this phrase later on in life, but it was the easiest way to explain to them when they were small was, you know, there's good people in this world, and there's bad people in this world. And that's how it is. We're the good people. We're going to do things how we're supposed to do. And the bad people, they can't help but do bad things. So, I mean, that's you're explaining that to a small child. So, and I still use that phrase today, even though my kids are 18 and 20, when I should probably be more detailed, explaining what's good and bad and why we do the things that we do. But very fortunate that both my boys are excellent young men.
So what I would want, I would want to say, but Dad, do good people ever do bad things?
Yeah.
I would ask, because that's the kind of kid I was. And what would you say?
What good people do bad
Do good
things?
people ever do bad things?
Sure. Yeah.
Because there's good people who do good things, and there's bad people who do bad things, and that's kind of easily understood. But it strikes me that somewhere, somebody that they've identified as either a good person or a bad person is going to flip the line, and then sort of where do I put them, right?
I was going to go into this when it was my turn to talk, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll bring it up now. I've been here for 25, almost 26 years in the police department. And I honestly believe, for our police department, we have good officers, good human beings, and they do screw up. And the problem, what's going on in their head is, I think, somehow, some way, they justify it in their head. They think that they're doing the right thing. Something as silly as overtime or coming to work late, they'll justify it by saying, well, I put a couple of hours over here, they owe me this. They justify it in their head. And they're wrong for doing that, but they're still good people for the majority of them. General Order 1, that did affect a lot of people, but it had to be done. And some of the people that it affected, it's unfair, and some of us are biased. I mean, I have to be good friends with the person that he's describing. And if that, it's hard when you go back in time, 20 years in time, because you want to be fair. And to be fair, everybody has to be addressed the same. And throughout that 25-year period, it wasn't, because things were called things differently. It wasn't called truthfulness, it was called cooperation coordination, and other people got passes and what have you. So this had to be done, but moving forward, it's just going to take some time, as long as it's equitable for everybody.
So I'm just going to throw out a couple of terms that have come up here, and we'll hold them until we get to you, because I don't want to take your time here. But you talked about fair being the same, treating people the same, and I want to pose the question to the class, is that a good definition of fair, being treated the same? And then you talked about equitable, and I'm going to ask the class at some point, is treating people equitably, treating people fairly, and treating people the same, is that all the same thing, or are there some differences?
I got something that I share with my kids on that.
Good.
Which is, let's say Jack's a twin. Let's say I've got twin children, boys, girls, whatever. And one's a student, helpful around the house, shovels snow for the neighbors, has a part-time job, is involved with the community, straight arrow, motivated, comes to me and says, hey, I've saved up some money, I've identified a car, I'd like to purchase the car, I'll pay my own car insurance if you allow me to have the car and let me get a license. he's demonstrated good judgment and done everything right, I'm probably going to be inclined to say yes. Twin brother, raised in the same household, only 2 children, raised by the same parents, goes to school when he wants, is insubordinate, refuses to pick up behind himself and help out around the house, doesn't have a job, has no interest in helping out with anyone in the community, has a bad reputation in the community and everything else, experimented with drugs and alcohol, this, that, and the other, or whatever, showing poor judgment at every turn. When he hears that his brother, I'm allowing his brother to get a driver's license, he comes to me and he says, well, I want a license too. And I say no. And he says, well, that's not fair. We're the same. My response is, you're not the same.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I get that. And you put a great set of caveats and descriptors on the two individuals, so that one earned it and one didn't, and those are kind of easy situations. Not easy. Those are easy to see. I mean, when the way you laid it out, it was easy for us to say, yeah, we got this and then we got that. Sometimes it's not so easy to see. Sometimes it may not be as clearly a matter of performance. I would say that's a matter of performance. Like one guy's meeting all the job description requirements, and the other person isn't, and so one gets promoted and the other doesn't.
And then it comes down to, I guess, the values of the family or the organization. Yep. Or the agency, the department. If because I think the chief may have hit up on some of this stuff. If the department values certain things, and that subject that's not doing what they're supposed to do is not doing those things that the agency values highly,
right,
there's going to be a negative consequence there. Whereas if they're discretionary things, there's not much harm to the agency, there's not much harm to the reputation of the individual, and it doesn't have a huge impact on the performance, the outcome, the service delivery, but it's something that maybe you just don't like, or you think that it's not very productive behavior. That person may not receive the same consequence as someone who's violating something that's a core value of the organization and family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Let me give you a more typical not fair. I saw this in Conan O'Brien did a great commencement speech. Ever get to see
I was
it?
wondering if it was going to be O'Brien or the Barbarian.
Conan
When you said
O'Brien
Conan.
did that commencement speech up at Dartmouth a couple of years ago, and if you guys ever get a chance to watch it, it's great. Because he starts off with rule number 1, life's not fair. And he goes through the next 9 and gets to rule 10. He says, rule 10, see rule number 1. And it is true. I mean, life isn't fair. And this concept of everybody's going to be exactly the same is ridiculous. But on a practical sense, I've got 2 good captains. One of them works in SOS, and one of them works in operations patrol. I can guarantee you the guy that's up in my special operations section does 3 times the load because of the nature of the job that he's in. SOS is a crushing job, and there is no equity there. If you want to talk about equity, the guy who's my watch commander, he works the days with his shifts, he gets more time off. I mean, across the board, they're both captains. They're both equal pay. Neither one's getting anything better than the other one. But this one's definitely carrying a much heavier load while he's in that assignment versus this one down here. And we make those decisions all the time. We transfer people. Every time we move people, there are 2 lieutenants, and I say, well, that's not fair. He didn't get transferred. Why am I getting transferred? Well, because at this particular point in time, you have the skill sets I need, bye-bye. And I have to go into that new assignment. So, I mean, there's a lot of things I think we deal with out there that you can't expect absolute equity in positions. I think the fair part of that is, when you accepted the job in the front end, we made it very clear that you're subject to the terms and conditions of your employment, and you're subject to move based upon the needs of the agency. That's the fair part. After that, not so much. So I mean, his is clear cut. I get it where some of these guys feel there's inequity, because why is this guy getting so much more than this one? Luck of the draw.
Gervais, gray areas. Did you run in, as you were going through the paper or your thought process, did you run into any gray areas where you said, yeah, sometimes I struggle with this one, or sometimes I struggle with this one versus that one in terms of values.
Yes, because, and I guess the reason I didn't say always, I said when try and when possible.
Sure.
Those are lever words used to basically take into account that we are human beings, we do make mistakes. They're, you know, I don't have to have a hard and fast rule for everything. Does that make sense? So that allows me an opportunity to determine whether or not the gray area is this, or if it's that.
It defines the box
It defines
in
the
which
box.
your decision-making has to occur. But there's still gray in that box, right?
Exactly.
In a variety of things.
Right, but at the end of the day, I think we've said it a few times here, what's right can be considered subjective by some people. It depends on where you're standing and where you're sitting, whether you're the person that's receiving the discipline, or the person that's giving out the discipline, or maybe even an uninvolved party who's just witnessing and saying, well, I don't know that, I would agree with that.
Right.
Everyone may have, you know, a different opinion on what they think about it based on what they know. So, it's kind of weird.
And I think that's one of the challenges of this whole ethics thing. I mean, if this was all black and white, this has been a pretty short morning course a week, 2 weeks ago, and we'd have been done. It's not all black and white, and sometimes it's not as clear as we'd like it to be. Not all, but sometimes.
Yeah, so I'll close with, on Wednesday, I had to do a civil service. I had to represent the county because the employee was not represented by a lawyer. So I represented the county in prosecuting a civil service appeal case. And the employee was a second lieutenant who was sleeping with a subordinate, an officer on the squad. And he came up with a lot of different angles, a lot of different reasons why he shouldn't be demoted. You know, one of which that I thought was kind of interesting is the fact that he said that the county had a policy that when people's circumstances change, that the county shall transfer people so that there's no conflict of interest. So he felt that his circumstance changed when he fell in love with his subordinate, so the county should have transferred him in spite of the fact that he kept it a secret. He didn't go forward and announce that he had fallen in love with his subordinate. But he felt that when the county later found out about it through an anonymous source and he admitted that he was in fact sleeping with a subordinate, he felt that the county, instead of demoting him, should have transferred him because there's a policy that says that the county shall do that. I thought that was kind of weird.
Get a vote for weird there?
Well, can we talk hypotheticals?
Can we what?
Let's talk hypotheticals and not
Yeah,
facts.
sure.
Okay? So, this employee, so he may want to claim a hardship because he's married.
I left that out. He was married at the time that he was sleeping with his
He's
subordinate.
married, hypothetical, I don't know the facts, all right? But, he's married, and his wife and him, we have 3 young children and an infant child. They're placed at different shifts, A and B, so they never see each other. So they fight the county for 6-7 months, trying to get shift over so they can be on the same shift for the family and this and that. And it never happened, okay? He finally gets over, so they're on the same side, but by that time, the family is in turmoil. They're fighting, they're looking at divorce, a lot of family problems going on. Hypothetically, starts talking to a friend turns into something else, and there you are. So again, this is some guy, he obviously did something wrong, but he's justifying in his head why
I see
he's
what-
doing what he's doing.
Right.
He's,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I just read a thing, about a woman who discovered her husband, it was on the opposite side of where the crossword puzzle is in the post, so there it was. That you know, her husband was having an affair and making her out to be the bad person, and what was up with that. And the columnist pointed out that very few people say, I'm doing something that's bad because I'm bad, and that's that. Most people try to create the circumstances in their own mind so that they can justify what they've done or are about to do. And, you know, you all, I mean, at some point, we each have to individually judge where truth is on those kinds of things, I guess. But it would seem that from an ethics perspective, and going back to the hypothetical situation, if the agency has done a very good job, the organizational culture is such that it does a very good job not only of having rules, in this case the rule's pretty obvious about who you supervise and things and the relationships with people you supervise, but also has invested considerably in trying to develop a culture that's built around sort of the ethical underpinnings of some of those rules. The individuals in this case had about a dozen decision points before it got to where it got to when you got involved, where a reasonable person might say that had they behaved more ethically, this would have never happened. You know, somebody would have quit, somebody would have gone to a neighboring department, somebody would, or they wouldn't have, you know, I mean, some sets of choices were available at a number of junctures that either they made the wrong choice each time, or they just weren't as cognizant as two people of the ground they were treading on. You know, they weren't getting the ethical piece of this. They were just trying to figure out, is there a way we can skirt around the rules? And that is a responsibility in my judgment of leadership, not to go back to module 3, I didn't mean to do that. But the failure for leadership to do that doesn't necessarily excuse the behaviors if someone you know, essentially does some things wrong. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Who's next? We go around the room, or?
Sure.
Go ahead. Does that mean you? Or do
I
mean
don't
him?
mind, I don't mind.
Did you just throw him under the bus? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so, I found it a little bit challenging that you asked for our personal professional code of ethics. And so, I kind of thought that was a bit challenging to decipher. So, you know, I think my personal code drew me to become a firefighter in public service. But I also think that my profession has influenced my personal code on you know, multiple levels, particularly over time. I think that my code of ethics, because I'm a firefighter, is set at a higher bar. And I do think that my leadership position within my job creates an even higher bar. Because I think that as leaders we have to always lead by example and the right example. I believe that my personal ethics influence my decision to become a firefighter because I wanted to help people to do meaningful work and to have some excitement in my life led me to this profession. And so, you know, I think that this profession, not unlike or like law enforcement, is unique in that it requires, you know, you to be physically fit and also to be mentally fit and well versed. And I think, in large part, as a bit of a side note, we tend to dumb down both of our professions. And I think we need to do just the exact opposite. I think that the shit that we're responsible for handling and managing and responding to is hugely challenging. I don't know if we have a good appreciation for that. Anyways, so I wanted to be challenged. I am challenged mentally and physically. The motivation for becoming a firefighter, I think, was centered on my strong sense of family and friendship, close relationships, and so when, you know, that's, you know, what we respond to. We respond to you know, situations where families are impacted. And I think that in turn gave me the motivation, provides me the motivation to raise to achieve a higher standard across the board. You know, I want to be as educated as possible. I want to experience different things. I want to be prepared. I challenge myself. I think this is especially true in my current position with the high threat program, because I believe that I can make a difference in preparing not only my department and firefighters and law enforcement officers, but preparing a system to identify bad people beforehand, and also to respond more effectively to minimize the death and damage if things fall through the cracks. So my family, my friends, all of that is my motivation, really, to do a good job. And then, you know, like you said, what is ethics? I mean, it's all gray. It's in my head. You know, there's certainly values. There's statements that you can have. You know, I think it's a combination of all this crap, really, that gives me my ethical background. You know, it's my upbringing. It's my religion. It's, you know, my family, all that. So that said, you know, I came up with a couple of kind of statements and stuff that kind of I live by, and you know, I think it can be expanded, certainly. But I found this very challenging. I actually started it last week. I didn't finish it till yesterday, but I was challenged with, you know, looking at this and trying to figure it out.
Because of the combination of personal and professional? Is
Yeah,
that what did it, or-
well, no, I think it wasn't that. I mean, I could kind of sort that out. I think it was, what is ethics? You know, I mean, it is this combination of stuff, and I think it's a vast combination of different circumstances. And so getting it in my head is what are the foundational pieces of that have influenced me, was the challenging part. You know, I see a distinct difference. I don't know if you see it, Trevor, or maybe a cop see it on the other side, but like, you know, the stuff that they're talking about, I think it was, I don't know, more, more serious, maybe. And maybe it's because of your perspective as a law enforcement officer, I don't know. But I found you guys being way serious, and it's probably because of your position in IA and your position, your philosophy, you know. It'd be interesting.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by more serious.
Well, I don't know.
I think maybe there's a clear divide sometimes, John, in the police world than there is in our world, because we live together more, and I think maybe the police officers, it seems like anyway, you know, when you make a decision, or you have people that work with you, or there seems to be more black and white and not as much gray sometimes in the leadership process, where ours, the family portion of the fire service and the leadership portion can collide. And the fact that we're together so much, you can't help but become close with the people you're with. So sometimes being the supervisor is more challenging. I know you guys are close too, but you work a shift, you don't live together per se. And obviously,
Yeah, they're close. I mean, you're just talking about Guy and Gerhart.
yeah, right, yeah. And that never happens in the fire service.
Well, there is certain closeness there.
There's a certain level of closeness there.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is the culture of a firehouse
Yeah.
in local government is kind of unique to the firehouse.
I think the police officers are more independent because they work alone a lot of time. Yeah, they come back into a team environment, but for most of your shift, or depending on what your job is, you're out by yourself, operating by yourself. And for us, that's an unknown area for the most part.
Was it worth it? Was it? You said it was challenging. Was it worth doing? I mean, did it take you some places that you wouldn't have normally have gone in your thought process?
Yeah, I think so. You know, what I wanted to do since we first talked about it was, you had talked about developing this family kind of code.
The model, something like that.
Yeah, at the beginning of the
A brand.
Yeah, and I had talked about doing that too.
As actually
I think this-
the instructor told us all to develop one,
Yeah.
I guess.
What do you mean?
The instructor basically had us all do one, right? Come
No,
up with a
you said
family
you
brand.
had. You said you had one though.
Yeah.
You lying?
No,
But I
Team
liked it. I mean, I thought that this would be like a logical tie-in to that. I think because you kind of give your family some rules to live by. This is in large part what this is to me on a personal level.
Well, and I think at some level it's rules to live by, but it's also guideposts, because rules often assume an absolute nature that don't always work, and rules oftentimes, because we want to not trap people where they ought not be trapped, they dumb down. So there are a lot about don't do's, not a lot about do-dos. And if you think about, your personnel regulations, the things that disciplined people get disciplined for, more often in my experience are where they did something they were specifically told by the rules not to do, because that's easy to identify, that's easy to prove, it's pretty straightforward. We don't discipline people for not doing enough of what they're supposed to do, or we don't coach them. That's not historically been our focus. And yet, if we're really talking about an ethical culture and an organization that's filled with people who behave ethically and think about ethical behavior and try to model ethical behavior, a lot of what is going to actually make that happen is the stuff they do, not just the stuff they don't do that they shouldn't do, right? It's the overt demonstration of walking the talk, not just avoiding falling over the line of a prohibition. I think that then makes the areas more gray, and there are not always technically right answers, or sometimes there are technically right answers and they may not be the right answer. What I'm hoping you get out of the class here is that there is this kind of need to constantly do some personal evaluation and professional analysis within the gray area to figure out what's the right answer for this particular instance that I'm in now, because it's not necessarily a formulaic sort of thing. Very good. Thank you very much.
Can we take a break?
You may.
Oh, I didn't know the rest of y'all needed one, but I'm.
7 minutes. 7 minutes. Come back at 25 after if you break. If you break.
So how are you doing? Let me get my hug. My Christmas hug. It's so good to
I gotta tell you, when I saw your name, it didn't click. And when I looked at you, I said, "Oh my gosh, it's Nita!" Now I get it.
There you get it. Oh.
We were together. It was an SEI. It was
Yes.
a 2-week thing, right?
Mhm.
We were together for 2 weeks down in Charlottesville, on the same small team as well as in the same large class.
Yep,
So we have a history.
we do. And I was not going to miss both of these classes.
Well, I appreciate that.
Have to make it to this.
I
class.
appreciate that, and it makes grading the class participation part a lot easier when someone's actually here.
And as soon as I got on the interstate, I was running probably about 15 minutes late, leaving out of Richmond, out of my apartment in Richmond. Got on 95, and then everything came to a stop. And I said, okay, well, just a few minutes late. I know it still gives me about 45 minutes because I get here at 8. I sat on that interstate in Richmond, maybe 3 miles.
In Richmond?
In Richmond.
Oh, wow.
For about 40 minutes.
I was gonna guess it was in Stafford.
No,
You hit it.
it was clear go, it kind of slowed up to maybe 60 miles an hour around Stafford and kept going, but it was a wreck. It was a really bad wreck. And I thought about it. I said, Nita, I'm so glad you were late. That might have been you up there
Yeah.
if you had just left maybe
Well, that's
15
true.
minutes earlier,
That's true. When I'm coming from Lake Ridge and I'm coming here, I mean, I always do the GPS thing, even though I know the way by heart, but it's the, don't go that way, go, I drive up to Lancaster obviously a lot, but I always check because I would say 30% of the time, as I'm approaching Baltimore, it diverts me from just going to the Baltimore Beltway and around to the 83, and it takes me out somewhere to Columbia to get, 29 or something, to get 70 to come in because the Beltway is just slogged down.
This morning, it was great after I got out of Richmond. And thank you for those tips, because I forgot. I would have still been riding around. Exactly. But the HOV lanes are wonderful. Wonderful. You pay a fortune. Just wait till you see your bill rise.
That's okay, I loaded up, so it's automatic replenished.
Yeah, I mean, they are, but I mean, and I think it's, well, obviously it's on purpose, it's, people have to decide it's worth it, and they have to do that. They have to do that.
I kept saying, can I get up here being by myself? Can I, you know what? I'm getting up here, and if he asks me, I'm not coming here. That's all I was gonna say.
And was that ethical?
What, could I do
Oh,
that?
I'm
There was
sorry.
no rule that said I couldn't, so.
Couldn't do what? Couldn't
Get on
get,
the HOV lane by myself.
There's a rule.
There is?
No, if you have Easy Pass, you can get on it.
yeah, you just pay.
You
Right,
just
I have my Easy Pass.
Oh, no, you're good.
Now, on 395, doesn't matter if you have Easy Pass
No,
or not, you
that's-
have to get off.
You gotta get off, yeah,
Mhm.
on 395.
Oh, I didn't go on 395.
I mean,
I bet
495.
You didn't? Oh, okay. You got off at 95?
I got, I took the HOV lane to 495 going towards Tyson.
Okay.
Then came back around to Tyson and got off on, coming towards 66 Vienna, Fort Washington, and came that way.
Wow.
Went
You're
down
not
there.
allowed
That's
to
why
do-
you stay on the HOV all the way around.
You're not allowed to do 66.
Huh?
you're not allowed to do
66 is HOV only.
Well, not the part I got off on.
It is
Because
inside
I'm
the
saying
beltway.
you're on
66
495, and when you get off on the exit,
Yeah.
it says the exit is either you go towards Fort Royal, Vienna, or you go towards Washington.
Right.
And when I got off on Washington, there was no HOV.
Yeah, 66 inside the beltway is.
It's all HOV. There's no SOV.
Well, this
Well,
wasn't.
guess what?
This wasn't, because there was no HOV, what's some things called? Trackers that scan your thing.
No, you're not allowed to be on there as a single occupant vehicle.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't in HOV.
No,
No,
if
the
you were
whole
on
interstate.
66, you were on
I was
HOV.
on 495.
No, but
but
when
you
you
said you
got
got
on
on
66.
Yeah, it says to get off Washington 66.
Yeah, but all of 66 is HOV.
It is?
Yeah, the
Inside the
whole,
Hey,
the whole,
hey, I didn't know. I'm sitting there like, no, there's regular people there.
It's just inside the beltway, which we are right now, 66, is HOV.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, there's regular people were there.
Okay, great. What about in the evening?
I'm breaking the law too, because I'm.
No, because I'm like, I seen regular people like me.
66 inside the beltway is HOV in the evening from when to when? I don't think it's all, it's not
It starts at
HOV all the
3.
time. 3
No,
to
it starts at
3 to
3,
6
right?
or
That's what I thought
3:30 to
it
6 or
But in
something.
the morning, it does it in the morning too. I think it's
Oh, see.
Well, in the
till
evening-
9:30.
Oh, I didn't
After
know.
9:30, you can get on it in the morning.
And
But in
trust
the
me,
evening, you
waterworks
can get on it
came
before
on
3
because I
o'clock,
didn't
right?
Yes.
Before 3, okay, so we're gonna be good before 3, right?
Well, you're probably going back out. Are you going back out 66?
Oh, yes, 395 is horrible.
And see, my directions have me going 6681 when I leave here.
Where are you
Because where
going?
I'm going.
Well, you're going different place.
Yeah, I'm on a different place.
Oh, okay.
I have a problem with that, because 66.
So how far out do you go
No,
in
but
66?
that's-
When I go 66, it's 495, and then I take 495.
This is,
and
it's
then
a very
95.
short
95?
part when you get off the exit, say from
Because
495.
395 is unbelievable. Before we learned this 495 route, it would take us an hour just to get on the HOV lane from here on 395. We've been on the interstate almost an hour and a half trying to get to the HOV lane, creeping it 5 miles an hour. So
It's the first time.
it's worth the ticket.